So today we're going to be talking to Christian B. He's a beekeeper. He is an amazing individual, very knowledgeable about beekeeping, about nature, trees, all elements of basically that weave that we tend to have and not notice as we live within this quantum field. So I hope you enjoy this interview. It starts a little bit abruptly, but I hope that you get as much information as you can, and maybe you will be enticed to own some bees. So this basically is a conversation about the similarities between the human body and the life of a bee with Christian B. Please join us. And that if we overthink it, people change the way that they start talking to me.
I'll just be weird right from the start as we're recording. Have you seen what you're looking at there?
I am. That's amazing. Is that in your office?
My office, yeah.
That's amazing.
So here, I should cut it shorter, but here is a pipe that goes to the outside.
What?
Hole through the wall to the outside. So
you live with them. You see them every day. You see how they change, how they.
Yeah, I often come in here and have my morning coffee in here. It's the most reliable thing I do in my office. My business would
That's
probably be
really
better
interesting
if I did
because
other things as well.
I always thought that a beehive needed to have, meters and meters and meters of space and all that kind of stuff. So I'm really surprised to see it inside your house.
No. So, well, they have got miles of stuff outside. There's the pipe to the outside.
But in the sense that,
They fly
you
outside.
always see like the bee houses in the countryside that, they need to, because I remember when Mark, my husband, he came back after seeing you and he's like, I want to have a beehive. And I was like, yeah, but we're quite enclosed, as in all the houses face in. So all the gardens are kind of in an alley, if you want to know.
Yeah, let me take you for a walk, because I live in a semi-detached house. So, my God, my garden's a shit tip, especially my back garden. Looks like Del Boy lives here. So, it's probably easier if I turn it round. Just so you can... can I turn the camera around? No, to turn the camera around on this. No.
No idea.
No. Let's not drop my tablet out of the window.
Yeah, no, that would be really bad, especially as we need this information.
Yeah. So now, can you see the hole where I'm pointing it?
I can see a wall with an electric wire.
Oh yeah. So the wire isn't actually that, it's just the points where the wire used to be attached, and next to it is the hole.
Right.
These aren't very active because it's a bit cold.
Oh, so they go through those little holes.
Yeah, but there you see it's all gardens.
Move your thumb. Oh, wow.
Do you see that? That's all my neighbours' gardens there.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So you don't need thousands of acres, and it's a lie.
No.
They've been lying.
In fact, you just saw more biodiversity than you would see in your average farmer's field.
That's amazing. So anyone can have a beehive anywhere in any space.
Yeah, legally they are sort of they're mainly viewed as wild animals,
Right.
rather than domesticated animals. They just are anywhere. So like if a sheep strays into your garden, it's still or a dog, it doesn't belong to you, it still belongs to its owner, it's just got lost.
Right.
Whereas if a deer or a pheasant wanders into your garden, as soon as it's on your land, it belongs to you.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
And
Okay.
you can shoot it and eat it, or whatever, or feed it and
create it as a pet or whatever,
or tame it. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, it's yours, and bees belong into that wild animals category. So if a swarm leaves your hive and you notice it doing so, and you follow it to keep sight of it, then it still belongs to you. If you lose sight of it, it's no longer yours. So you can follow the swarm across your neighbour's garden
Yeah.
legally with all the 5 foot fences. You've got to be quite athletic if you're going to follow. Or you could probably do it along streets and stuff like that.
So how often do swarms leave your vicinity? As in, do they leave the hive and never come back?
Yes, swarming is there's a lot of misconceptions about swarming that are probably based on some horror films and stuff like that. So remember when we spoke, I said about that's not a box with 20,000 insects in it. It's
Yeah,
one
let's start from the beginning. First, I I'm not going to introduce you properly because I'm going to do that separately. But
Okay.
it was really beautiful to meet you when we were at Ian's. It was so special, and it was such sort of synchronicity to what's going on with what I'm planning and where I'm heading and what I'm planning to do. And I loved how you said that people see hives as separate rather than looking at it as a whole, which is kind of how we look at the human body. We see it as separate parts rather than looking at it as a whole.
Yeah, I was listening to some of your podcasts, and and it's really annoying to me when I go and talk to my doctor, and he just wants to prescribe something to go on my finger because my finger looks scammy. It's like, yeah, but why is it? What's wrong with my body that my finger's done that thing?
Absolutely. Or they
Yeah,
look
yeah,
at, I have so many people that come, they might have a frozen shoulder, or they might have an issue with
yeah,
their elbow, and they'll get
yeah,
sent to the physio, and the physio won't look at any other body part. And it's like, well, it's not separate, it's together. So, it might not be the shoulder, it might be the hip. You need to look at the hip.
yeah. What are
So
you eating
when,
and how are you getting
talking
on with
to
your
you
kids?
and talking about the beehives, I was just blown away and I was very excited because it was kind of like mirroring to a point the human body. So
Mm-hmm,
I wanted to know more. I'm very into quantum physics. I'm very much
mm-hmm,
into connection. And I
mm-hmm,
see, I see the correlation or the mirroring that happens with, for example, the connective tissue, the
mm-hmm,
biofield that we as humans have. Then, when you study quantum physics and you study the field,
mm-hmm,
sort of there's a lot of layers that are very similar and interwoven. And then
mm-hmm.
when we were talking about beehives and how they are interwoven, I was just like, right, I need to speak to you and we need to record this conversation. But tell me a little bit. I mean, I know that you have 3 children and that you have lived most of your life in a land-based, organic, biodynamic, intentional life-sharing community. I like that sentence that you wrote for me. I grew up in a world with biodynamic. My mum was she's passed, but she at the time was very much into her allotments. She used to focus so much on biodynamic. I remember my mum, for example, she would cut my hair depending on what was happening with the moon. Sort
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
I've touched base with some of those ways of life.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So tell me a little bit about you. Tell me how you said to me when we first met that you always knew you were going to be a bee man. So
Well, not quite like that. I always knew that I was going to keep bees. So actually, the distinction is quite important to me. I always thought it was really weird that people identify themselves by what they do. And I realized that in the last few years, I've started doing that. So I'm a massage therapist or I'm a plumber. It's like, to me, that seems weird. To me, like that was like I do plumbing or I do massage, but like that's what I am is so much beyond that sort of
yeah.
thing. But I do now sometimes describe myself as a beekeeper or a bee botherer or whatever. But even
Well,
that,
you're known in my house as the amazing bee man.
the amazing bee man. Great. I'm good with that. But I mean even then I I really struggled for a long time. I kept feeling external pressures pushing me towards doing beekeeping for a living, and whenever I started trying to do that, it didn't work well for me, whether I just wasn't happy doing it or whether bees get sick and don't do so well anymore or whatever. It didn't really work for me, and now I really love beekeeping as a hobby. I highly recommend it as a hobby. I think most people should keep bees, but we shouldn't keep very many of them. And I've kind of created a job now where beekeeping is a hobby within that job.
Okay.
So I might spend a week at a time going to a festival, including setting up and taking that down. That's my job. In that time, I'm not doing beekeeping directly. I'm not opening beehives and bothering them, and I'm not harvesting honey and all of that. And I make like products and then sell them direct to the public. So actually the amount of time I spend opening beehives is, I don't know, maybe 3, 4 times as much as the average hobbyist would do it.
I've got so many questions. My brain is on
Yeah.
fire and I don't really know where to begin. But one of the
Well,
biggest
this
questions.
is why I'm here. This is why I'm here. So, yeah, I very much feel like the results we get in life come from the quality of questions we're asking. And as beekeepers, we're clearly not asking the right questions, because the answers, like, there's loads of really smart people working on trying to promote bee health with loads of budget, and because bees are worth billions to our global economy, food economy,
Wait,
and it keeps getting worse. So we're asking the wrong questions. So that's part of why I'm here. I want
but tell
different
me,
questions, new
if
questions.
if you're saying that they're worth billions for the global economy, in
Yeah,
what aspect first would they be worth billion? You know, obviously we need it for our own human survival, but I don't
yeah.
think that's what they're viewing it as, or is
No,
it?
no, 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 no. Well, yeah, it's like if you eat an avocado or an orange or an almond, or like that's a bee has touched that. It wouldn't be here without a bee, unless you're going to hand pollinate them. And that is done for plant breeding, where you want a specific plant to breed with a specific plant, but that's done for genetic manipulation purposes, not for mass food production. You can't, like, yeah, a bottle of rapeseed oil or whatever, that's like loads of seeds that have been pollinated there, and that, yeah, no one can do it more cost effectively than bees, but even that costs money. So beekeepers are paid to take their bees to places to do pollination, and I think that's already, as far as I'm concerned, that's already where that wouldn't be happening if we were doing farming right. So it's those big monocultures that depend on beekeepers moving colonies of bees to that monoculture, to me is indicative of the farming being done wrong. Like if you look at photos or video footage of almond orchards in California, and that is where 80% of the world's almonds are grown, is in California, and most of them, they have a scorched earth policy. So
Okay, to the
there's
people listening.
there's almond trees in rows with irrigation generally, and everything else is sprayed dead.
Okay.
So you've just got scorched earth, like scorched with herbicides, with almond trees, and that means that for 3 weeks of the year you've got loads and loads of flowers, almond flowers, for the bees to be feeding on, and it's good food for bees. But if you ate nothing but carrots for the next 3 weeks, you'd probably be quite poorly at the end of it, and a funny orange colour, because you need other things as well. So that's why bees are struggling, or that's at least part of why I think bees are struggling, is because we're not giving them a balanced diet. Yeah, if you eat nothing but carrots for the next 3 weeks, and then we go on to the next orchard where you're eating avocados for the next 3 weeks, it's like, that's not cool.
Yeah, we're not seeing them as beings, not bees, but beings
Yeah,
that
yeah,
have their own ecosystem and their own way of life. We're seeing them
yeah,
as I don't know, kind of robotic little things that we can put into a space and say, okay, do the job.
yeah, 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 yeah. And but if we had the natural biodiversity, so if we let all the wild plants that want to grow beneath those almond trees, then there would be loads of bees there already. because they would have a food source all year round
So you wouldn't need to bring them in
for the almond pollination.
for the, okay.
Or you might, and if it was still like thousands of acres of almonds with nothing else in between and just the natural herbage still, then there would be a lot of bees, that like all sorts of wild bees and honeybees and stuff like that, but probably not enough for the almond pollination. But if you then had other orchards mixed in with that as well, so you haven't got it all flowering at once, then you wouldn't need to bring any in other than those that are already kept there. So you'd have beekeeping industry that was non-migratory. So I see migratory beekeeping as indicative of a problem.
And when you are bringing in your bees or hiring beekeepers to bring in their bees, I can only assume that can be quite distressing for the bees.
For the bees, I mean, if we go back to sort of what do bees do in the wild, and this is a really interesting thing. It was actually earlier this year. I was listening to a podcast interview with a bee researcher, scientist person who he started keeping bees when he was about 12 years old. He got his first beehive, and he realized sort of early on in his professional career as a bee researcher that almost all studying of honeybees has been done of bees in white boxes.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a bit like going to the zoo to study lion behavior.
Right. Right.
Lions behave a bit differently in captivity than they do out in
Yeah.
the savannah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Lions, I thought as
That's
a child in
fascinating
Bristol Zoo,
thought.
they don't behave like normal lions. They behave like normal zoo lions. And so even in here, in this observation hive, so bees, they start building at the top of the cavity that they live in. So they build their combs downwards from the top. For beekeepers, for the ease of manipulating things in the hive, we keep them in frames.
Yeah.
So they build from the top of the frame downwards, or usually we have a sheet of foundation in there so they build more quickly and on a more robust surface. But that means that above the frame, there is a space where the air can move, where it wouldn't be able to move if that was blocked off by a honeycomb. So we've changed the whole thermodynamics within the hive because air
They've
can move.
adapted. They've learned to adapt.
Yeah, or they're struggling because the thermodynamics are wrong.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, it's I don't know. What I know is that it does change the thermodynamics, and that's something that that was a new thought for me this year after 20 years of beekeeping, and it's like thermodynamics within the beehive is really important, and the way that humidity and moisture moves around within the beehive and stuff like that, that's really important. And by keeping bees on frames, we completely changed that.
So tell me a little bit about the beehive. You know, sort of you're describing what humanity has created in what is convenient for us.
Yeah.
If you, I mean, I don't know if you've looked at or spent any time, but obviously you've got your observation thing in your office. So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit, because the other thing that I remember in the conversation that we had when we met was that you had different bees that did different things. And that's why you always saw the bees and the beehive as one being rather than lots of bees.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say I always saw it that way. So I would have, if you would have asked me 5 years ago, looked at my observation hive at an event or whatever, and said how many bees in there, I would have said like maybe 25,000 bees in there, depending on how big the colony was. Whereas now I'm clear it's one being, and understanding that shift in thinking really changes how I see them. And I also tell people that up front now, because it is generally one of the first questions that they ask. And those people that get it, they then ask completely different questions. So I'd often get mainly vegan type people like, oh, isn't it cruel keeping so many bees all crammed in close together? That's like saying, isn't it cruel keeping all of your organs packed in tight together? And it's like, yeah, I used to see opening a beehive, like ripping the roof off someone's house and having a rummage around the nursery and helping yourself to what's in the pantry. Now I see it as far more invasive because the beehive is actually the outer skin. With like the bees wouldn't survive much longer without the hive, without the box, than you would survive without your skin. Like, yeah, so
And it's
no,
really
it's not having all of those cells, all of those individual bees packed in tight together. That's no more cruel than having all of your organs packed in tight together, and keeping them in a box is no more cruel than keeping you in your skin.
yeah. And when you said that to me when we met, for me that blew me away because, sort of if we correlate it to the human body, fascia, which is the connective tissue that holds everything together, that keeps
Hmm.
everything compact,
Hmm.
is only something that has been studied in the last, what, 30, 40 years. Prior to that, sort of when medicine was being studied, when we were looking at cadavers, sort of at the turn of the century, we would remove the fascia thinking it was padding, which is kind of
Yeah,
similar thinking as the beehive. They think, oh, well, it's padding, you can just lift it and move it and it doesn't really matter. And it's like, well, it does. It's what
yeah,
holds
yeah.
and allows the fluidity. In a human body, it's the fluid, and I presume in a beehive, it's the temperature control and the air.
Yeah, and also very much the bees themselves. So if you like, there's manipulations we do with bees that involve just shaking a lot of bees into a box, and you pour them, and they almost like honey, like a viscous liquid when you
Wow.
pour them, and and honey is their store of energy. So in Britain, we have about 280 different types of bees. That's one honeybee, about 15 different bumblebees, and all the rest are various different solitary bees.
So all of those are in one hive, or are they separate types?
Um, Solitary bees, as their name suggests, solitary. They
Mm.
they they might flock together, kind of like you get a lot of birds. They live in flocks. It's like you don't get a seagull nesting on its own. It nests with loads of other seagulls and that kind. So a lot of solitary bees will do that. So I went and saw ivy bees for the first time last year or the year before, and there was hundreds of them, but they are solitary bees that each individually emerge at the same time, and then they're around for 6 weeks and then they're gone again. Um, but they, yeah, each individual bee does its own thing individually. Um, sort of. Uh, so whereas with bumblebees, then they work like wasps and hornets as well. So you get a mated queen that survives through the winter, in hibernation, and then in spring the that mated queen will found a new nest. So the founding queen, the foundress, she will start a new nest. So she needs to find a nest site, find some food, build the structure in which to lay the eggs, feed them, warm them, and then they become workers, and she no longer has to do all of those other jobs. She then becomes much more like the queen bee in a honeybee colony, who just lays eggs and doesn't do all the other jobs. And then towards the end of that life cycle, they produce queens and drones, and the queens go off and mate with other drones, and they then start a new nest. I think with some of them they do it several times through a summer, and then in the autumn they have ones that hibernate through the winter again.
Tend to find those nests. Do they look similar? Are they similar to honeybees or?
No, not really. They're much, much smaller, so it would be a few hundred individuals in a colony. With wasps and hornets, there's a few thousand. They can get pretty big, but um, they're all different in different ways, and I'm totally not an expert. Um, there's some bumblebees like to live in mouse nests, for instance. and stuff like that. Wasps and hornets, they will sometimes inhabit beehives, or like where bees would live in the wild, the same sort of spaces, but they build a nest out of paper rather than wax. So there's a few different ones, but what they all have in common is that a single queen starts the colony, and then they do their thing and everything dies other than mated queens that start a new colony. And they deal with winter by the colony disbanding, dying, whatever, and mated queens surviving through the winter. So a bit like solitary bees, where obviously they can't be perpetually doing their thing because winter. In the tropics they can, but here they can't. Whereas honeybees, the way they deal with lean times, they're very much like us. So they're tropical species like us, who have learned, evolved, whatever, to be able to leave the tropics. So we had to make fire and clothes and better caves, like with double glazing and all of that kind of thing. And that means that we now live all over the world, like other than Antarctica, we live and thrive and do all of that. And honeybees are much the same as well. So
what's the hierarchy in the honeybees? Because we've got the queen, but you've mentioned that, you know, you see it as a whole. So how does that work for you to see it as a whole?
Yeah, so yeah, no hierarchy. Like, what's the hierarchy in the organs of your body?
Okay. Yeah, they're all needed
Yeah, it's
equally.
so I would so and there are three different types of bees in a honeybee colony. You've got the queen, you've got the drones, and you've got the workers. And so the workers are sterile females. The queen is a fertile female, and the drones are fertile males. And actually, yeah, part of why I see them as a single being rather than individuals. So any organism can do two things: it can feed itself and it can reproduce. If it can't do both of those things, it goes extinct, it dies. And there isn't a single bee in a honeybee colony that can do both of those things. So seeing it as a being, as an individual organism, doesn't make sense. It can't. It just like my finger can't, like, it's clearly alive. If I separate it from the rest of my body, if you're quick enough about it, I can reattach it, but otherwise it's going to die. And that's the same for all of those bees. And I have parts of my body that can digest food. I've got other parts of my body that can think about how to get the food. I've got other parts of my body that eliminate toxins. I've got other parts of my body that can reproduce, but they can't feed themselves.
So, but I guess, for example, the queen you would say is like the brain.
No.
You can lose workers because, you know, we can lose certain organs, whatever, you know, you can lose a couple of workers and just, you know, find a way around it, but you can't really lose your heart and the brain. Which one would you say is what is the colony and what is the brain?
Yeah, so I'd say the queen is the female reproductive organ. She lays eggs, and unlike a bumblebee queen, she can't feed herself.
Okay.
So she lays eggs and she produces pheromones, so airborne hormones that are really important for the functioning of the hive. So if you were to remove the queen from a colony of bees, and 3 hours later I come along and open that beehive, pretty much instantly know there's something wrong here. Wouldn't immediately know what is wrong, but the vibe would be wrong. The vibe would be off.
So when you say vibe, what do you mean by that?
If I knew a more concrete way to describe it, I wouldn't be using a term like the vibe.
No, but is it like see how they move? You can sense their rhythm, you know, sort of.
Yeah. It's, I mean, bees communicate through song and dance and smell.
Okay. That's
so so they don't, so yeah, like literally literally the vibe would be off. It's like, yeah, the sound would be different. The bees would be more edgy. They would be more likely to sting me. They would be, and in a like the different resources within a beehive are quite well organized. So you have honey towards away from the entrance towards the top and the edges. And then inside that you have like pollen and nectar stores. And then in the center towards the bottom you would have the brood nest. If you take the queen out of that, then things become more disorganized. And 3 hours later they wouldn't have jumbled it all up because it's there fixed in the cells. But if you can keep a colony going by keep adding young bees to it, so it would be a colony that has no queen in it, but that organization would go. And it's not the queen telling them where to organize it, but it's more like she's the focal point around which they organize it, if that makes
Her
sense.
resonance, her vibration is the thing that basically echoes what they need to be doing.
Yeah, and I'd say that more as in probably more smell than sound. Although she does make sound, but it's the hormones that are there. It's like, yeah, like, I mean, it's different. If you look at it at a biological level, how we feel, you can measure that in hormones. It's like change the hormones in someone, and that they change how they feel.
100% speak to all the menopausal women in the world.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, how do you organize your life now that you're not a fertile female anymore? It's different.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I guess there's with perception, and that's part of why I'm really interested to be talking with you is there's clearly there's conscious perception, and then there's a lot of other perception, and then there's other stuff that I might not even be not consciously perceiving. But yeah, my degree's in psychology, and I don't know, I hear different figures. Generally, somewhere around 80% of communication is non-verbal. But can you tell me what that 80% is?
Well, I can't scientifically tell you, but I can tell you from a person that works in perception that a lot of it is not only our own vibration, but also the resonance that our biofield is emitting.
Yeah.
And that resonance, that, sort of I say biofield, people kind of look at me strangely, but if I say auric field, they'll look at me even worse. But if you think about it, what are we? We're just vibrating, resonating atoms that are magnetic, moving through time and space. The only reason that we're like this is because basically all the atoms are gathered together and we're a bit of matter that turn into a meat suit. If we were to expand and look at the different layers, we're so much more than that. And that's why, sort of I look at not just bees, but nature in general. You look at trees, you go for a walk in the woods, if you live in a city, and suddenly your whole system just goes, it just changes. And, I walk a lot. I've got a beautiful collie, so, I have an excuse to go for a walk. And I notice how, or my thinking, I might be wrong, I'm not a scientist, but my thinking is, sort of that nature has its own sort of rhythmic pulsing. When we enter that space, just like the bees, the pulsing, whether it's smell, whether it's sound, whether I don't know what it is, but it's what I call the field, which is, as a cranial sacral therapist, that's what I work with, is I work with a field. When you're entering that space, suddenly your whole system just shifts, and you can't explain it. You can't, it's not like it's like medicine. And I remember reading somewhere that in Japan, I think it's in Japan, the doctors prescribe time with trees.
Yeah. Is it Shinrin-yoku?
Yeah.
So the Japanese have very much studied scientifically the effects of what you notice when you go for a walk in the woods. So yeah, what you know to be true from your experience of walking in the woods with your collie, the Japanese have actually scientifically this sort of pulled apart, because I think Japan urbanized more quickly than anywhere else in the world ever, sort of in the 40 years after World War II. So they were really keenly aware of this massive problem that people had because they weren't in amongst the trees anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And
yeah,
it does impact you. It does impact your biofield, when you're resonating, when you're moving through time and space, and all you're
yeah,
feeling is concrete, which still
yeah,
has its own movement, but it's stronger than water or trees. And sort of when you were talking to me about how the colonies change and things like that, I was thinking, well, it must be the same. It must be that they feel this pulse.
yeah,
You see it. I mean, I've seen it in television programs where you see them and they do pulse. They have a specific movement. And
yeah,
that pulsation reminds me of the cardiac system and also the cerebral spinal fluid, which is what, as a cranial sacral therapist, that's what we connect to. We connect to the actual, it's called the tide. And it's
yeah,
rhythm that your body has internally. And you're
yeah,
trying to feel that rhythm. So for me, that's why I wanted to talk to you, because it was just like, this is really fascinating because you're looking at it from a completely different perspective.
yeah. Well, I don't know. Yeah, is it completely different? I don't know. It's definitely, to me, it's almost like you can see, like you don't need a microscope. Like I see the bees like cells of the body.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, people are always worrying about the dead bees on the bottom of the observation hive, or when they used to sell colonies of bees quite a lot, and I almost came to expect a call 3 days after after they took their bees home. It's like, there's loads of dead bees in front of my beehive, and I'd be like, how many loads would that be? With like thousands? And oh no, 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 just like maybe 20 or 30. And it's like, oh, don't worry about that. It's in the next few days, your local robins and blue tits will work out that there's breakfast for them there every morning, and they'll come and pick them up, and then they won't be there anymore. It's like, yeah, you haven't got the same blood that you had 3 months ago, and
And
that's
skin
so
cells and hair
that's
cells and
yeah, 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 yeah. But I mean, the blood alone is over 50% of all your body cells, isn't it? I think, and so yeah, that means that by Christmas, you're not 50% of you is going to be a different person to the person I'm speaking to now. But to us, it doesn't feel like that. So something lives beyond what
what the change is.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So and that's same with the bees. So the individual bees in the summer, they live about 5 or 6 weeks. So the bees that made the honey in June, July, when there was loads of flowers, are not the bees that I've got in my hive now, and are not the same bees that I'm going to have in my beehive next spring. So again, that's another thing where seeing them as an individual makes no sense. Like why, like just like your blood cells aren't individuals. Like why
The
would
same
you
as your
spend
organs. Your organs can literally, I forget the timeline, but you can reproduce you, I think it's
yeah,
within a year or something like that. All of the different cells, all of the different organs, everything literally can reproduce itself.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it sounds very similar to what happens to the human body.
yeah, but
Yeah,
you're still the same person even though your cells are changing.
absolutely.
And I think there are some cells that persist longer. I think there's some brain cells that might last for life, and your bones take a bit longer to change. I think your fat cells are quite persistent as well.
There's a
But
couple of organs that are a little bit more stubborn than others, but yeah.
yeah, but yeah. more than 50% of the cells in your body are going to be different in 3 months' time.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that is because we don't notice that and because we're not aware of that. I think that's why it's very difficult to see that and accept that in the outside world.
Yeah,
It's sort of, as you say, we kind of look at the bees and we look at, certain sections in nature and you kind of think, well, it's the same thing. And it's like, no, it has changed, it has evolved and it has transformed, just like you have.
yeah,
Every day, every year, you go through experiences and through challenges and through ups and downs that have changed your personality, have changed who you are, not just yourselves, but you as a human being. And that applies to all animals and all things. But we're so arrogant enough that we put things in boxes. And ironically, we do that with bees. We put them in boxes and it's like, right, this is how you need to be.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's really interesting, because something that I've definitely come to from spending time with the bees and understanding them more is how totally bonkers nature conservation is, because nature doesn't want to be conserved. It's an evolving thing.
It's interesting that you say that because that's one of my pet peeves. I walk a particular place called Saddlescombe here in the southeast,
Yeah.
and it's beautiful. Okay, it's
Mhm.
amazing, and it's run by the National Trust, and they do a great job in their own sort of entity. So I'm not here to criticize anybody. However, I find it incredibly frustrating that they are doing conservation of the space. So you have all these beautiful plants, and every 3 months, every 6 months, they cut everything. It starts again. And we've reached out many times going, why are you doing this? Every time you chop everything down and you burn everything, you're killing not only all the animals, but the bugs and the whole process of nature doing what it needs to do. If we're meant to grow things and if we're trying to have conservation and have more trees, just let them grow. And I went round the whole of the space that I usually walk, taking photographs of all the trees that are starting to grow. And within 6 months, they're all chopped down. So it's just like chopped down as in meaning because they cut the grass.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So, um, I mean, what they're doing there is they're mimicking grazing, because we've put fences everywhere and we've driven to extinction the large mammals that would be crashing through there, breaking things. If we didn't, if they didn't do that, it would all evolve into closed canopy woodlands.
Wonderful.
I really like open spaces as well. I want more trees. I really like sort of park landscapes. So where you've got trees, you've got some thickets with shrubs, you've got some open grasslands.
I think ideally, if we were to bring back, sort of the grazers, then it'd be different because the grazers don't just chop absolutely everything.
Yeah, 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 totally. So I agree with you in a really important sense that what they're doing there with their nature conservation is gardening. It's a different style of gardening, but it is still gardening. It's not like your formal Victorian gardens you've got, I don't know, in front of you, the town hall or whatever where you live. It is gardening just the same. It's just with a different aesthetic in mind. The definition for life that I really like is life is change. Life equals change. So for me, seeing a massive tree fall over and rot and die, I'm actually seeing. Well, I've just used the words rot and die. What I'm seeing there is massive amounts of life. There's fungi and invertebrates and all of that digesting that tree. That tree might have taken, I don't know, 300 years to grow, and in 30 years, it's going to be pretty much gone again. What I'm seeing, so that means that, to my mind, that means that life is that there's actually 10 times as much life there as there was when that tree was supposedly alive. because it's changing 10 times as fast. That's 10 times as much life. And if I chop it up and stack it into a fire and burn it, I'm like, who hasn't stood in front of a massive fire and just like, wow, that it's like all that glowing, I mean, it's so hot. That's so much energy. And to those of us that are keen gardeners that like a good compost heap, you stack that up, and 3 days later you put your hand in it and you have to take it out again because it's literally
Like an
boiling
oven.
hot. It's yeah. And some of us have even known muck heaps set fire, like because they become so hot from the life that's going on in there. To my mind, sort of the whole nature conservation is, well, yeah, conserving something is preventing life, is actually anti-life, and just
I've never thought about it like that, and I like that. That's a really interesting way of looking at it, that it's actually preventing life because it's the transition, the transformation of change.
yeah. And once that had shifted in my mind, then it was much more about, so how do I want my home to be? Because like look at what otters do. They change the environment that they're in. They change a river into that might be running through the desert into a wetland that is far more biodiverse and has far more life going on in it than there would be without them completely changing the environment. And we as humans do that as well. So in the Amazon basin, there are people mining what's called terra preta, black soil, that was made by by humans. It's an anthropogenic soil. So it's a soil that was made by the indigenous peoples that lived there 500 years ago or 1,000 years ago or whatever. So the native Amazon soils are quite nutrient sparse clay soils, but the people there, they were making charcoal and using that to neutralize the smell of their excrement and then growing food on it as well. And there's meters and meters deep in some places of this terra preta black soil. And you see the same in Asia with paddy fields, and that you get a mountain that without humans on it would be rocky and have a few interesting plants on it, but mainly be quite a hostile environment for most plants and most animals. And actually, when we turn that into paddy fields, we are creating fertile soils and also managing the water so that, like, I mean, we had a drought in this country. Three months this summer, not much was growing out there. We don't have a shortage of water. We just have a shortage of managing water because 10 months ago, just down the road from me, a load of houses flooded. And so we're not short of water. We just it's just the will to store that water for 6 months, and then then
I
it's
think
there.
it's trying to view how we do things differently and learning that actually transformation and change is positive,
Yeah.
and that can apply to humanity, that can apply to nature. But it's from what aspect are you coming from? Are you coming from the I want to take, or
Yeah.
coming from, okay, let's see how this whole network works together, and let's see how can we do this the best we can for everyone involved?
Yeah, so I changed that slightly. It's neither positive or negative. Positive and negative as a viewpoint. That exists in me. It doesn't exist out there. That's the Buddhist principle of emptiness. I wouldn't consider myself a Buddhist, but I do like some of what they're on about. So there's a Buddhist teacher I know. He'd say, "What is this?"
Pen.
Pen, yeah. And then he says, "What if all the people walk out of this lecture theatre and we get loads of dogs in here, and I hold this up and say, 'What is this?'" It's a chew toy.
Yeah, it's all a matter of perspective.
It's just a matter of perspective. And so, in a way, just lighten up about it all. Just like be Like, it doesn't actually matter. There isn't a good or bad. Does it please you or does it displease you? That's the honest version of it. Whether we turn that into a monoculture or whether we have it really diverse, or whether we cut down these trees so that the grass can persist, or we let the trees grow, which means that the grasses will die. Like, what is better?
Yes, there's
Doesn't
not right or wrong, it's just a perspective.
yeah.
Yeah, I love
Um,
that, Christian. That's really beautiful. Now, obviously, we're now coming to a slight end, but before we do, there's two questions that I have for you. One is, how would you integrate the lessons of the honeybees? It's a big question.
I integrate. Well, I mean, I guess some of yeah. I mean, I've said some of them. I think a big thing I learned from the honeybees is a really fundamental thing is like go with what is. So honeybees don't hibernate. All the other bees hibernate. Honeybees create a big store of food which they can use to persist through the winter. People ask me what are the bees doing in winter, and yeah, they're waiting for better weather, and they're waiting for an opportunity. So they have their goals in mind. They want to reproduce. They want to build the colony up to a size where there's so much spare that the colony can split in half. Half of them buzz off and find a new home, and half of them stay behind. So you've got two colonies where you had one colony. As a beekeeper, I don't particularly want half my bees to fly off. That's because that's it's the spare energy that create that if that energy flies off, that's then not honey that I can harvest. And whatever I take out of the hive, they try and recreate that equilibrium. So they will then try and replace those stores. And then, so if I take, if I want to make a new colony, I'll breed a new queen, take out a load of brood and some food resources, put that in a new box with the new queen, and I've got a new colony. They will then try and rebuild that strength. If I want to harvest honey, I take the honey. They will try and rebuild that honey. So they've got their ideas of where they're aiming for. That's kind of what's inside the box or inside the hollow tree that the bees would be living in. And then they've got outside of that box, they've got the opportunities of certain flowers, of certain weather conditions, of all of that. And when there are some flowers in May and early parts of June, they will be gathering pollen and creating that workforce. In midsummer, then there's suddenly a massive explosion of flowers, nectar bearing flowers, and they just focus on getting in as much honey as they can. That's their number one priority. So their brood rearing activity actually decreases because their first thing they want to do is just bring in nectar. If there's nectar there to be brought in, bring that in. And that's where their energy focus goes then. So it's, yeah, what is it that I want? What is it where I'm headed? What are my goals? And then what are the opportunities that are out there? So last weekend, I went out with my peddler's cart selling balms and honeys to people on one day in Abergavenny and one day in Bristol, because the weather conditions were right. If the weather forecast that I'm looking at now, this weekend I won't be doing that because it's too wet. So I'll probably go out raving and have some fun and maybe do some work on my tax return or something like that. So it's looking at all of my goals and then looking at what's out there to make it, to bring that possibility. I didn't a month ago think I must record a podcast interview, but I did. Like for the last couple of years, it's like something that I thought I should be doing that. And yeah, a month ago I met you and at a party, and it's like there's that opportunity. So it's like the right weather has come along for me to meet that or move towards that goal. So that's very much a thing that I learned from the bees is make hay while the sun shines. It's like
I love that. Make hay while the sun shines. Yes.
yeah, yeah. It's
Now,
just
I will obviously, I was going to say, I will obviously put your website and the link to your products and all that kind of thing. I know that you're in the process of updating your website, but your logo is beautiful, and I'm going to put it all up in the link. Now, I know, again, we're running late, but just one question, last question is your observation tower. Can anyone have one of those in their home? And is that something that you would, is that an offering that you give on your website?
Yeah, so certainly I teach beekeeping. One of my beekeeping courses free, and at the moment difficult to but possible to find on my website. But if you want it and you can't find it, my my phone number's on there as well. So I can help you find the bits that aren't there. Keeping bees in an observation hive indoors does come with some slight extra complications. It is probably easier to keep them outside than it is to keep them
I'm just
inside.
thinking the sense of the urban world, and they might not feel confident in
Yeah,
actually having a beehive in the garden and da da da. So
yeah,
providing the more people have bees, the better it will be for everybody. So just thinking out
yeah,
loud whether that's something that could be on offer, and whether that's
yeah,
something
yeah, yeah.
you do.
Keeping bees in urban areas is there's more biodiversity in urban areas than there is in the countryside. Bees thrive on biodiversity, so there's there are loads of people that keep bees. There's a database where people keep of beekeepers. It's not compulsory to be on that database. It's estimated that about 1/3 of beekeepers keep their records up to date on that. 1/3 are kind of on there, but not quite up to date. 1/3 are not up to date. And within a 3-mile radius, there are probably uh, about 400 beekeepers you'd find within a 3-mile radius, or apiaries, so that's sites where people are keeping bees. So there are a lot of people around you keeping bees. You just don't know because you just wouldn't know. I used to, I think, have it once bees fly above 6 feet. The interaction between you as a member of the public and the bees is
You
pretty
don't
much
see them, yeah.
you don't see them. Yeah, I used to literally keep my bees some of my bees about 3 meters from a public footpath, but there was a 7-foot hedge between the two, and no one on the public footpath would have known that they're walking straight past some bees.
Wow. Okay. So look, what I would love to do, if it's okay with you, is I will, sort of put all your details, and then if anyone is interested in having a beehive, learning how to manage them, or having an observation one at home, I don't know how easy that is, to reach out to you and
Yeah,
see if we can get, sort of the most amount of bees as possible out there.
amazing, amazing. Cool.
Brilliant. Christian, thank you so, so much for your time. It's been really, really lovely chatting to you. I've really enjoyed it. And yeah, let's
Thank you.
let's touch
Likewise.
base,
Thank you.
and
Yeah,
I will be booking onto your beehive course with Mark in the next.
amazing.
All right.
Fantastic.
Thank you
Thank you so
so
much.
much. It's been lovely.
Cool.
All right.